All right, I'll call to order the regular council meeting of November the 9th. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming on the District of Summerland YouTube channel, youtube.com, District of Summerland. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Members of the public are encouraged to register their name and civic address in advance of the meeting for the public comment opportunity found under items 8 and 15 by emailing corporateofficer@summerland.ca. Those who have not registered in advance but wish to provide public comments may call the District of Summerland conference line at 1-877-385-4099 and enter participant access code 7382948 during the live meeting. Any late items to introduce, Karen?
There are none, Madam Mayor.
All right. The CAO has asked for a bit of an amendment to the agenda. So item 9.1 will be moved to just after 5.2. So it'll become 5.3 and then 4, 5, 6 after that. Okay, so 9.1 is being moved to between 5.2 and 5.3. Okay, so with that amendment, could I have someone bring forward adoption of the agenda as amended? Councillor Holmes and Councillor Van Alphen, all in favor? Thank you. And then adoption of the minutes, regular council meeting the evening of October the 26th. Looks good. So Councillor Holmes, Councillor Van Alphen, all in favor? Okay. And then getting right into bylaws. The first public hearing that we had tonight, 5.1, OCP bylaw number 2020-019 and zoning bylaw number 2020-020, both having to do with the property at 2107 Tate Street. Okay, so any questions of staff, council? Councillor Holmes.
Yes, thank you. In the staff report, it says a number of conditions will be applied through the subdivision process, and I'm just wondering what exactly those conditions would be.
So normally, when we go through a subdivision process, there would be a number of listed conditions as part of a preliminary layout approval, as an example. It's the first step to achieve within the subdivision process. And for this one, we would look at servicing impacts, potential impacts on Little Avenue, if there's a need for upgrades, and there might be a requirement for the landscaping to delineate 2 lots. That could be a conditional item as well. It's just there'll be a list of conditions that we're looking at. Something I'm missing specifically. Oh yeah, access. So the ensuring that there's access, which we've already presented to both lots and what the access issues may be. And because it's a bit unique because it's existing in place, it's not a new development per se, it's a change of use. But we would still evaluate the impacts to our sewer system, perhaps going from a multi-use to residential. There might be more or less impacts on current systems. We would all do that through the subdivision process.
Just to follow up question then. The applicant spoke of installing security cameras and ensuring the key card access to the parking lot. Would those be conditions, or would that be just?
Not normally for a subdivision.
Are those any I mean, I guess my question is, how do we hold them up to that to ensure that that he does what he says he's going to?
Yeah. So this is also required to get a development permit for the Trout Creek area development those type of aesthetic or security constraints can be dealt with through the development process, so it could be a condition of that.
Any other questions? Councillor Holmes? I have a couple too, so.
Thank you. Things that will require a variance, like the parking requirements for bicycles, that will have to come back to council. So if we like, if we like, or if we pass this, but we might not agree with one of the variances, does that throw a wrench into the whole plans, or are we basically agreeing to variance requests right now as well?
No, so the variances will be separate to this application, and we'll as such require support with staff and such council as well, and separate.
One more, I guess. So, depending on the result of the other public hearings that we had today, I'm just wondering if, and this is something we can discuss, but I'd like to raise it with council, but we talked about how temporary use permits could be expanded and how it could be a good way to test out a use. If, is that something that would be possible in this? You talked about in your staff report that no major alterations to the existing buildings would be taking place, and so would that be, I guess, just technically, would that be possible?
I think at the staff level, we wouldn't recommend that approach because the change in use would also require a change in occupancy for the building code, which requires substantial renovations to the existing structure in place to bring it up to the residential code for high density residential versus tourist accommodation or occupancy, sorry. A temporary use permit wouldn't give the security to the applicant to go forward with those renovations and put that investment in. If potentially that permit was to get pulled by council at any point in the future. So zoning would be the best approach.
So I guess that's what I'm not really clear on, exactly what modifications are required to comply with the code and whether they're major or not. Looking at here, both things that they're major, but here they're not major. So.
For sure. So yeah, I'm not 100% certain on exactly what modifications will be taking place. I would direct that question probably to the architect on the project. He would have the background.
I don't know, can we ask him?
If it's the wish of council. No?
No.
Your worship, we have closed the public hearing, so
Oh,
right
yes,
now
of
it's
course.
a council debate, and I think it's you.
Yeah, through the chair, your worship, just to follow up on one of the questions around the I guess the order in which the applications are coming through a council. There's obviously some costs that will be associated with investing in the building, changing from a hotel to a residential use. So the first question that council is in front of council to consider is the change in zoning. Council are not adopting the bylaw tonight. Should they wish to approve it, it's going to be sitting at third reading, subject to a lot of those technical details coming forward, which will add some cost and technicality to the process, which may need to come back in front of council. However, if there's no support for the use change, then there's no need for those subsequent issues to be dealt with in the future. So that's why the zoning is in front of council, and that's why staff would brought forward the condition to sit at that third reading. Again, should council support that, subject to the various upgrades and things that will be required as part of the subdivision review.
Councillor Carlson and then Councillor Barton.
So just to follow up with that on Council Holmes' question, if upgrades were made and it was given a temporary use permit to be an apartment, would those upgrades not be good enough to go back to being a motel? If it improved the building?
Yeah, for sure, I think theoretically that would work, but the owner is making an investment, and generally, like, in order to get financing, for example, you mentioned Summerland Credit Union to do these renovations, like a bank as well will want the security of the zone being in place versus a temporary use permit. There has been issues in the past I've dealt with the security of a TUP not being able to be borrowed against.
Councilor Barco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councilor Holmes brings up some really good questions. The first question I have is, if this was to be approved by council and some of council thought it was quite relevant and important to ensure that there was a gated sort of a little community there, how does council sort of ensure that that's what happens rather than just hoping that staff kind of makes that direction?
Well, like Alex mentioned, we do plan on bringing forward the form and character development permit for the truck area and the variance development permit. Council can at that time provide a list of conditions as part of those development permit approvals for the installation of security gates or if you want to review the landscaping. That's where you do get into more detailed, fine-grained look at the proposal from a development permit perspective versus just looking at the use as what we're doing today. So there would be an opportunity for that.
So you might say if it was important, we could turn down the development variance first
That's true.
and say, come back to us with a gate. So that type of thing.
Yeah.
And the other, not a question, but comment, I think it's subjective kind of a deal here, whether renovations are major or minor. I can see that major would be taking out walls, joining two buildings or something. Minor would be when you redo the kitchen inside the units. And even what I would term minor, which is, it would probably be far too much of an investment for a temporary use permit, although I do think it's a good thing to consider. It doesn't seem like, and from what you're hearing from staff, I don't think it's something that really is practical.
Okay, so is your question related to what is actually before us? So the amendments? Thank you. Okay, good.
Question I have is, there was some comments made in the public hearing. Is there a vegetative buffer between, I drove down one street and there's lots of vegetation, large cedar hedges, buffering that building from the residential, but is there a buffer between the ag land and the hotel today?
There is.
Thank you.
Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To staff, if I may, it was in discussions with Councilor Holmes, you spoke of change of use. If there is a change of use from the motel to apartments, would we be looking at individual unit BCCs?
Yeah, we would probably review the requirement for DCCs at the subdivision stage, which we do have an application for. And we'd have to look historically on the property if DCCs have been already paid. In fact, we would be moved to requiring it again, because you can only get payment for DCCs once in the property that's been developed, according to the LTA. So if DCCs have already been paid for the previous development of those properties, the hotel use, then we would be able to collect additional DCCs.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. I work for someone who can answer this for me. Unfortunately, our Minister of Finance isn't here tonight, but the change in the OCP from a motel to residential, is there a tax implication? Is it more taxation, less taxation coming into the coffers at City Hall? Anyone close?
Yeah, through the chair, your worship. So the commercial tax rate for this property is higher than the residential tax rate. So the property would be taxed at a lower tax rate. Again, BC assessment would need to be involved to get that 100% accurate, but likely a reduction based on the commercial rate to a residential rate.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Barco?
I guess my question would be to the CEO. When we were talking, I think Councillor Van Alken was thinking more in terms of the total revenue. The rate may change, but would there be a change in the property value which results in the similar or well, at least similar revenue to the district?
No, for sure. And that, again, BC assessment will have to have that type of review undertaken once or should the use change.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions, could I have somebody bring forward the resolution, please? Councillor Van Alken?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, that the official community plan amendment 2107. That the official community plan amendment 2107 Kate Street bylaw number 2020-019 be read a third time, and 2, that zoning bylaw amendment 2107 Kate Street bylaw number 2020-020 be read a third time.
Seconder? Councillor Barco? Okay, further discussion on this? Councillor Carlson?
This is a really difficult one. I don't know if everyone else feels the same way, but I guess one of the biggest challenges and things that I've seen through this discussion that the neighbors and the neighborhood of Trout Creek have brought up doesn't really have to do with the fact that there's already a hotel there. It has to do with who's staying at that hotel for the winter months of the year. And that's a difficult, or at least who they perceive as staying there. And I think that's really difficult to make a judgment on as a council, because that's what keeps coming up. You read the letters that we got, half of them mention the crime and the vagrants and the addictions and all the things that they are assuming are going on over there. And so it kind of obscures what it is we're actually looking at here. And so I just want to put that one out there before I say anything else, because I think it's really important that we recognize that shouldn't be whether the reason that it's approved or not approved. I think that there's more merits than that, and we should be looking at the other things that have come up and been presented.
Thank
Because I
you.
don't think that's going to go away or stay based on what the occupancy of that motel is.
Thank you. Councillor Van Alken and then Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Carlson brings up some incredibly good points. I appreciate all the correspondence that has come in. And I respect people's concerns in the area for sure. The whole housing diversity issue in Summerland has been an issue for a long time. We're in dire straits for these types of accommodations. I was so pleased to see the Wharton Street development go in. I am thrilled that Hunter Hills is proceeding, but it doesn't meet everyone's needs. This is possibly an opportunity to meet other people's needs in our community. I'm hoping that the applicant would also look at situations where there may be, a single mom and a child that's in need, and that availability could be met. There are some great amenities in the Trout Creek area, school, parks, beaches, what have you. I think these people, like in this situation, in a longer term rentals, I think would be possibly more appealing than the short-term winter month type rentals. So I don't know, from the information I have today, I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Yes, thank you. I do find this a difficult one. I tend to agree with the advisory planning commission that the location is not ideal for high density housing that is too far from services. Apartment building this sort ought to be closer to downtown core. And if I were to ask myself if this was an application for a brand new build, would we approve it? And I don't know, but I tend to think probably not. And so I'd hate to, it kind of sends a message that, you can build something that is acceptable, like a motel, and then wait 5 or 6 years and then apply to have it zoned. So I hate for us to send that kind of message out to people that this is okay here. And I do understand the neighbors' concerns. I've heard them, but this is my big but here, is that I really think that what's being proposed would help address the neighbors' concerns. It wouldn't make it, what they're concerned about would make the situation better, not worse for them. If what's done is actually done. And so I'm conflicted because the neighbors are overwhelmingly convinced that it'll make things worse, whereas the evidence kind of, the plans kind of suggest, well, it'll actually make it better. So I'm thinking of another hypothetical situation. If this was an apartment building right now, and there was no real problems with the tenants, and there was an application to change it into a motel with that prospect of monthly rentals over the winter, what would people think of that? They'd probably be dead opposed to it. That's why I suggested the idea of a temporary use permit, so let's just find out because nobody really knows. And failing that if that's not possible, I would really like the applicant to consider exploring the option of more diverse unit options, so more 1 and 2 bedroom units. I think that, as his architect said, that should be possible. I think that might make it a lot more acceptable to the community, to the neighborhood. But still don't have decided whether I'm supporting it. But I think there is merit. We need these kind of units, and but it's a tough one.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Barkman and then Councillor Patton, and then Trimmer.
I think that Councillor Holmes said what I have been thinking, only much better than I could. I would add to that I've read all the letters. They all seem to sort of say that what we've all heard, that there's a concern of the crime in the neighborhood. And I think that Mr. Lacasse and Mr. Bossier kind of summed it all up. It's really, they're not sure. Will it be an improvement? We have to make that decision, I think. Will it be an improvement? And I've gone back and forth on it, and in the end, in addition to the fact that Summerland badly needs affordable housing, rental accommodation, and the fact that, and there is the fact, which seems to override everything else, it's already being used as rental accommodation. So how could renovating it, making it long-term, be anything but an improvement? And so it's a surprise to me, the opposition in the neighborhood, but I think, we're put in this position and I have to go with my own judgment. And my judgment says that it will be an improvement, and in the end, people will be happy with the apartment.
Thank you, Councillor Barkman. Councillor Patton.
I thank Madam Mayor. I totally agree with my colleagues. We are in need of some attainable, more affordable rental accommodation. Right now, we don't have developers knocking on our door saying we want to build another 29 units in Summerland. And I feel for the residents of Troll Creek. I understand. Wasn't long, it was only 3 weeks ago that on my security cameras, there was a fellow going through my wife's car for 2.5 minutes going through the car. My neighbor's truck got stolen. So it's not only in Troll Creek that this happens. It happens all throughout Summerland. I really would ask the owners, as Councillor Holmes has indicated, to look at a couple of different options, unit options, that could probably be a little bit more palatable to the community if it just wasn't so many studio units, but a combination of 1-2 bedroom units with some studios mixed in there. But I think this is a super hard decision, and I'm sitting on the fence as is my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Councillor Trainer.
Well, I would say this is, me too, it's a very, very difficult decision. I really appreciate everybody, including the proponents and all of the neighbors, for taking the time to give some thoughtful feedback. It's a tough decision because whichever way we go, someone's going to be unhappy. But I'm going to keep my points to a higher level because we're being asked to look at the OCP and rezoning, so that's where I'm starting from. So number one, the OCP right now it calls the property commercial tourism, and there's no mention of high density residential in Troll Creek right now because it is located away from downtown and from services. Number two, we don't have a neighborhood plan for Troll Creek, and I don't think that we should be making drastic changes to our OCP and to rezoning without a neighborhood plan. Troll Creek is unique, and I think that having a plan specific to that area is really key with proper input, and we haven't done that yet. And currently, in the neighborhood, we don't have high density residential, so to put that in without, in my opinion, a more comprehensive plan is a pretty big change for the neighborhood. Number three, the advisory planning committee had many concerns that I shared as well. They said this was a good project, but they were concerned about the location, and I agree with that. Number four, I have to listen to neighborhood feedback as well. I have to consider what the residents in the area are saying because they live with that every day. And over the past month, we've certainly had a lot of feedback. So for those reasons, at this point in time, unfortunately, I cannot be in support of this project.
Thank you, Councillor Trainer. Councillor Holmes.
May I ask a question of clarification with to staff?
Yes.
Thank you. If council decided they had concerns with it, but they might be more willing to accept it with some changes, what would be the process?
I can take that one. So council has to decide on the amendment bylaws proposed today with the plans that were submitted as part of that amendment process. So the process would be to deny this hearing for this bylaw and to maybe instruct the applicant would provide some feedback as to what were the reasons for denial so that they can resubmit. They would have to though provide a substantial change from what was originally proposed to resubmit, I think within a year, timeline within their current procedures.
So just to follow up, so would a change in the configuration and number of units be substantial?
there's nothing in the bylaw that states the number of units, so council can perhaps do a conditional approval based on redesign, I guess, if that is council's wishes, because the bylaw is specific to just the zoning of high density residential. Makes sense.
Councillor Van
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if this question goes through our planner, and it's just in response to Councillor Holmes and others at the table. You know, so a business decision, this is a business decision of the applicant to go with studio type apartments. If this zoning went into place and the applicant found out that some of these studio apartments weren't that desirable and you needed to look at more 1 or 2 bedroom type units, is that something that can be done in the future? If the marketplace so demands that?
Yeah, I think definitely the zoning would be in place. It may trigger another building permit at the time, but that would be the only thing requirement.
I have a question related to the two that were just asked, and that is, what would it take to, I guess, how many units in that footprint would be allowed if it was a medium density rather than high density?
I apologize, we could probably look it up if I have my computer in front of me, but I don't know the density calculations.
I can't remember, I remember. Oh, that would be great.
Thanks, Mary.
Remember, we knew all of that when we were going through that express, but I've forgotten it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions in the meantime?
So council can look at that. So medium density residential, I think it's a range between 23 and 60 units per hectare. So that's 24 units per acre. And then just stripping down densities for high density, 60 units per hectare or higher. Our zoning bylaw does have more prescribed notes for the different zones. So we have different zones within each designated area.
So my next question would be, I guess, what's the area of that where the two facing pieces are? And that would include the land base around that as well, right?
Yeah, so the area is obviously a conversion to hectares for us, but 5,803 square meters. Just a moment second, let me get conversion. 0.58 per hectare.
So a little over an acre?
Yeah, that'd be about an acre now. Maybe a little less than that.
So if it was brought down from 27 units to 24 units, it would be medium density?
Probably right on the cusp there, yeah. Given it's 29 units.
27 units? It's 27. Oh,
The OCP also, and same with the zoning bylaw to stipulate what kinds of housing fit within the designation. So for medium density residential, for instance, it speaks to cluster housing, triplex housing, and fourplex housing, whereas high density apartments.
oh, so medium density doesn't allow apartments?
Based on
According to the street.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So like we've heard from the rest of council tonight, this really is a tricky one. I think it was Mr. Lathy tonight that said that the crime that goes on in Trout Creek is it's not the responsibility of the Summerland Motel. And knowing that there is crime throughout Summerland, throughout the South Okanagan, I would tend to agree that that's a totally accurate statement. The acting CAO and I are going to a mayor's roundtable on policing and crime at the beginning of December. Which reminds me, I haven't given you a date yet, but so that is something that we are looking at. I like Councillor Holmes raising the possibility of converting some of the studios to 1 or maybe even 2 bedroom units. I'll have to say, when I moved to Vancouver, North Vancouver, I lived in a studio apartment. And I was going to say it did make me crazy, but I'm a politician now, so maybe it had a long-term effect or something. But I love living in my little studio apartment. But anyways, that's kind of beside the point. I agree with a number of the councillors that have said, in fact, everyone has said that we really need to increase our housing mix, our housing options in Summerland. Councillor Van Alphen spoke to the Hunters Hill and the Wharton Street development. We have new units going in elsewhere in Trout Creek and across from the Summerland Middle School. Those ones are completed and fully subscribed, and there are some truly affordable housing with, agencies going on in Summerland as well. I think that given that we've heard from the Lathys tonight that these are going to be, there was the reassurance that they will be self-contained units, shared laundry, common laundry, but that's common in apartment buildings. And that, they'll have their own living space and it will be secured parking. We understand that there'll be some variances coming up, but we can deal with them at a later time if we need to. Having lived in Trout Creek before, I certainly understand the sensitivities of the people that are living there, especially maybe over the last 10 years or so. There's been considerable development in Trout Creek, some of it not as aesthetically pleasing as we would necessarily like. But having said all of that, I think that the change to the bylaw, the zoning, and the change to the OCP bears a fair bit of merit, and I think I will be voting in favor of this later tonight. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. So one of the things about changing zoning is that once it's changed, putting it back to the way it was, which is why we talked about temporary use permit, isn't very easy. And I guess the the concern I have, and the reason I don't think I can support this right now, is because although I believe what the current owner says, and I see the value in what they are trying to do, that doesn't mean that that will continue, or that the people who perhaps purchase this in the future are going to have that same standard of care and neighborhood respect. And understanding that in the Trout Creek area, there are no high-density residential developments. And as Councillor Trainer pointed out quite eloquently, there is no neighborhood plan for Trout Creek. And so I think those things are all really important to consider. I also think it's important to consider that Summerland doesn't have a lot of motel or hotel stock, especially if you compare us to our neighbors north and south. We don't see big applications for larger motels or hotels coming to our area, and I don't know why that is, but I don't think that Trout Creek or Summerland is any less desirable to stay as a tourist location than Penticton might be. And so I do think that keeping it as it is, and then having a bigger conversation about what that neighborhood is going to look like is really important.
Councillor Barco?
For whatever the reason, Summerland doesn't have a lot of hotels, or maybe we do. We've got the Lakeside Hotel, a beautiful hotel in Summerland, where other hotels that have existed longer, like the Summerland Motel, have declined. It's the market that determines this, not Summerland Council saying, we think we should have more hotels. It's not because there isn't the land available for zoning that we don't have hotels. So I think we have to respect what the market tells us. And also the market tells us that in Trout Creek, you got beautiful, expensive homes, but they're not going to be along the highway. So close to the highway is probably where you're going to find your affordable housing, and that's what this looks like to me.
Councillor Van Olfen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as, I drove by there, I drove down the back street to the west, where it's nicely buffered with the cedar hedges, but I also drove down 97 Highway. And even in a short-term winter rentals, every parking spot is taken. So, the people that are even staying there today seem to have vehicles. So the argument that, you have to go drive everywhere for your amenities, and a lot of these people that are going to be renting, you may not have cars, and on it goes. The people that are there today seem to have vehicles. Everyone in Trout Creek has a vehicle, so I don't think that's a real argument, if that makes any sense at all. But, I just feel that, the amenity argument is, there are, people choose to live in Trout Creek and shop in Summerland, commute to Summerland for their needs or what have you. But I still believe that there are a lot of unique amenities in Trout Creek that are really appealing, or, even a high-density development like this. People like, there's all sorts of different opportunities out there. I know lots of guys, young single men, that work out of town, but they live in town, but they don't want to rent, they don't want to have an expensive apartment or a house to maintain, because they're working 3 weeks out or 2 weeks out. This may be ideal, somewhere to call home, somewhere to come when you're not working shifts, and come back and put your feet up and enjoy it, and then turn around and head back out to your work location, wherever that may be. So I think this has got some merit, and again, it goes back to the whole business discussion or the business decision. If the owner finds out that, oops, this isn't working out the way I wanted, and there's more demand for like 200 units, that can come back. So, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? I can't remember if this is actually on the floor or not yet. Yes, it is good. So the discussion, that's good. Okay, so are we ready then to call the question? Okay, I will do so. All in favor? Opposed? So that is carried. Thank you, Council. That was a good discussion, tough topic. Absolutely.
I just hope the applicant has heard the neighborhood and respects and understands their concerns and kind of proves them wrong.
Councillor
And
Carlson.
just another comment on that, I hope that the neighborhood won't even notice that it has been, that the change is made. You know, once it's actually in place, that perhaps it'll be so subdued and minute that they won't even recognize that the use has been changed. Yeah.
Okay, on to 5.2, zoning bylaw number 2020-022, and this is the 16618 Logie Road. So we've had the presentation already. Any further questions of staff for clarification? Councillor Van.
If not, Madam Mayor, I'd like to put a motion on the floor. That zoning bylaw amendment 16618 Logie Road bylaw number 2020-022 be read a third time and be adopted.
And that's seconded by Councillor Trainer.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I read it mine.
Any further discussion on this one? All those in favor? Okay, none opposed. Thank you, that carries. I forgot to, you may have seen, Councillor Carlson and Councillor Trainer were opposed to the previous one. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're going into 9.1, which is a development variance permit, 4993 Weldon Avenue. Is this Alex or is, oh,
It's Alex, he'll be here,
Oh.
he's just getting the front one.
okay.
All right. So the district has received an application for variance in order to facilitate the construction of an in-ground pool at 4993 Weldon Avenue. The requested variance is to section 10.3.5A, which prescribes the maximum allowable lot coverage. The applicant is requesting a variance from 40% to 41%. In the OCP, the future land use designation for the subject property is low-density residential, and it is zoned RSC2 residential large lot. These land uses are consistent with the neighboring properties. Zoning bylaw section 10.3.5A limits the amount of lot coverage on the subject property to 40%. The existing building has a coverage of 37%. The proposed 360 square foot pool puts the applicants over the allowable coverage by just 1%. The purpose of limiting lot coverage is to establish building massing and to limit impermeable surfaces on the lot to accommodate stormwater infiltration. The applicant has provided a rationale that due to the various medical reasons and age, a swimming pool provides for fitness and therapy opportunities necessary for the continued high quality of life. Staff has recommended approval of the proposed lot coverage variance as the small increase is not anticipated to have any impacts on the character of the surrounding neighborhood or on stormwater infiltration at the site. Thank you.
Is there anyone on the phone that is commenting on this? No, okay, and I don't see anyone else, so. Staff, that's not staff, council,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No one else wants to go for the motion
Yep.
on the floor?
thank you.
Development variance permit DBP 20032 to vary section 10.3.5A of the zoning bylaw, maximum coverage from 40% to 41% at 4993 Weldon Avenue, legally described as Lot 4, District Lot 488, ODYD Plan, EPP 5226, review.
Seconder, Councillor Trainer. Okay, discussion or questions of staff? Councillor Venom.
Minor. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, and now we'll move back to 5.3 or 4 or something.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
may I just get a resolution for after 9 p.m., please?
Oh, that's right, it's 3 hours, we started at 6. Thank you, I was just checking that, I thought, oh, well, we've got another 45 minutes. So could I, thank you, Councillor Holmes and Councillor Carlson, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Karen. OCP bylaw number 2020-024, hazardous areas, a 30% slope amendment. Any questions of staff? Councillor Bartle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering, when the last DVP, it was over 40% was the maximum lot coverage. If you're building on a lot that has half the lot, say 30% slope, does that 30%, is that included in your total area available for lot coverage?
Yes, it's included, the entire lot.
The entire lot is included. Okay, and that's for all zones?
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Councillor Van Houten.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate this amendment coming forward. I think it's, long overdue. I'm grateful for the creative thinking here, of our staff to, look at these 30% slope areas that, we weren't utilizing in the past. We have a lot of constraints in our community with agricultural lands and stuff, and these 30% areas, if the geotech says it can be built on, I think it's an opportunity for the community and to look at some more housing stock.
Thank you. Anybody care to bring this forward then? Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Holmes, thank you. So this is third reading and adoption.
Madam Mayor, may I
Yes.
just interject and mention that we are going to do just a slight amendment before giving it third reading, if that's okay. And
Okay,
really, it's just to change the numbering. So 4 bullets that are under 11.3.1.2 on the amending bylaw will be numbered 1 through 4, so very minor.
okay. So as amended then? Thank you, and Councillor Holmes, you're good with that, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's passed unanimously. On to 5.5. Zoning bylaw number 2020-025, administrative and modernization amendments. Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In regards to Ms. McDonald, which she did brought up. I think she brought up some very good points. And I'm not sure if it's too late, but I'm wondering if staff can take into account what she was speaking of, where farm products.
gate, yes.
Yes. I think that it was very, I think it's something that the community needs, and it's something that's probably talked about a lot, but never made it this far. And I would need to have Ms. McDonald come and speak to us, then we turn a blind ear to what she had to say. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if staff can do any amendments, or if we have to, but I'll leave it in. I'll leave it with you.
Sure. Our recommendation, we recognize that it's an issue within our current zoning bylaw. The proposed farmer that wants to go forward with building a fruit stand, we are concerned about the fact that it doesn't conform to zoning right now. So we were hoping to initiate a separate text amendment process, but because this has been already put through consultation for the intended bylaw that's brought forward on council today, we're recommending that we would adopt this bylaw, then we'll come forward with a simple text amendment in the near future to deal with the fruit stand issue.
If that's because it's gone through the whole public, through the
correct.
public one.
Yeah, Karen can jump in if she wants.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did have this discussion earlier, and definitely because the bylaw is presented and considered at the public hearing, it's been out in public and council's had a chance to review it, and that's what we're discussing this evening. I think even the confusion around what the wording might look like, so I do think it's better for staff to bring this back to council, probably sooner than later, but then it can go through the whole process.
Okay, Councillor Carlson.
She also mentioned something about packing houses as well as fruit stands. Does it mean that any farmer who's currently selling products roadside or through a fruit stand is actually in contravention to our bylaw? Or if anyone that has a packing house, is that might be a bigger problem than we think?
No, you're right. These are issues that are historical, I think, in the zoning bylaw that I think we're just not accurately interpreted within the bylaw to get around it. And that's not the regular way to get around it. Packing house, though, I do want to clarify that use is being cleaned up with the proposed changes before council tonight. There is a new use definition that will be included with the agricultural zones.
Councillor Van Alphen?
So is this a situation where, our zoning bylaws don't match the LC?
Right, that's correct.
Councillor Trainer?
Is there a clarification about the setbacks for agricultural land? So it's going from 30 meters to 50, is that agricultural land against agricultural land or against residential or both?
Yeah, so what we proposed originally to the committees was 15 meters for everything, but then following the committee feedback, we went through in addition to the zoning bylaw that states that if you are adjacent to a residential use, you still are required to maintain a 30-meter setback. However, if you're an agricultural property boundary another agricultural property, it can be reduced to 15, or another property, like industrial, for example,
Okay, so the 30 is maintained.
or residential.
Okay.
Was that not another thing that Denise brought up, though? Is that the setback between farm use and farm use, that she has a concern? She gave the example of erosion and movement of soil. So. Yeah, I guess I'm not getting anything.
I was at that meeting. The Ag Advisory Committee, they certainly weren't all in favor and happy to see that that it would be changed from 30 down to 15. But the Ministry of Agriculture was kind of like, you guys should have done this a long time ago, and actually it should be even less for some circumstances. And I know that there's resistance within the agricultural community to see this change. And we'll probably hear more from it over the next couple of weeks and months as people understand this change has happened. But it's, the provincial guidelines are to do even less in some instances. And so our advisory committee was not all that thrilled though about the idea.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, Councillor Bartlett.
I'm surprised that our ag advisory committee felt that way, because I thought part of the change is driven by the number of variance applications that, farmers in general see it, sticking a building in the middle of their property as a waste of space. And they would much prefer to have it closer to the property lines, closer to the road or whatever than further, but so I don't really expect a lot of opposition on it. And I think, Madam Mayor, that maybe you were thinking of your Denise McDonald's comments on retaining walls.
Well, she was talking about the erosion of soil as a neighbor would cut into a bank. Yeah. Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. And just to confirm that cannabis remains at 30 years? Cannabis production?
I believe it's subject to the same as any other of the intensive uses, which would be 15 meters for property adjacent to other agricultural properties, but 30 meters for residential.
Okay. Any further discussion? So we'll be getting a text amendment sometime in the next.
We'll try to fast track that one.
Okay. All of those in favor? And any opposed? That's carried unanimously. On to 5.6, development application procedures bylaw number 2020-26 and OCP bylaw number 2020-027, development application procedures. Any questions? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is going to cut down process times for our citizens in the application process. In 2.9 in incomplete applications, it states if the Development Services Department staff determines that the application is incomplete. That is a scary sentence because that implies that it is on a whim, and we're trying to move away from red tape, yet that one sentence there is kind of scary. Mm-hmm. And I know I brought it up with Anthony at the advisory committee meetings, but with what we're doing here to try and speed up process, I would hate to see us stall the process based on not having the, I don't know how I can express it, but just on a feeling of a staff member saying, oh, sure, now you need this, because everybody around the table has heard from the community in where this has happened in the past, so.
If I can respond to that, I think one thing that will help is to create some consistency and create a process as to how we deal with an application that we deem to be incomplete. So the Local Government Act has stuff laid out within the development approval information section of the LJ. We're required by bylaw to have this section within one of our bylaws, which is part of the development application procedures bylaw. So it requires us to list out to the applicant what items are deemed by us to be the incomplete items and provide them a timeline to complete or provide those items back to us at the staff level. Within the bylaw that's being proposed and before you today, there is a process of reconsideration of those items. So if there's any concerns from the applicant that the studies, let's say, that we're requiring for an application are too onerous, they're going to cost too much, or they're not needed, or perhaps there's a historical study somewhere down in the file that they can utilize, they don't need to do it again. They can bring forward those items to council for reconsideration if they so choose. So the applicant always has the opportunity to appeal the decision of the development officer, which would be me in that role, up to council. And it would be listed out through a formal letter of what's required to the applicant. So I think we just need to get a more consistent process to what is required, providing a letter out to the applicant so there's clarity on both the applicant side and the district side as to what those requirements are. And then they can appeal it if they so choose to council.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? Will I have someone bring forward the recommendations? Councillor Van Alphen?
As presented, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Barkley, you're seconding? Any further discussion? Oh, yes, Councillor Barkley.
I kind of feel this is like one of those omnibus budget bills that has a whole lot of things in there, and if you want most of it, you gotta go with all of it. And fortunately, there was maybe just one tiny little thing or two that I might go with, so I say, great, boy, you've done a lot in 2 weeks.
Shame on you, Brad. You can't take credit for all that work.
Anthony did it all.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carries unanimously. This is very bizarre to be reading my mayor's report at the end of the meeting, but that's okay. Here we go. So I begin tonight by congratulating Dan Ashton on his success at being re-elected as MLA in the Penticton riding. Thank you to Dan, Ted Shoemaker, and Keith McIntyre for putting their names forward for their respective parties. Although I was hoping to be in the position to serve Summerland and surrounding communities in a different capacity, I'm very pleased to be taking up my duties and responsibilities again as the mayor's role. Thank you to Councillors Carlson and Holmes for stepping in as acting mayor during my leave of absence. So thank you, you two. On October the 29th, I was honored to be invited to attend a special assembly at Giants Head School to celebrate the school's new logo. It depicts a story about Giants Head Mountain that tells of determination and overcoming adversity, as told by Anona Campi, who's with the Penticton Indian Band. And she has been working with the school to further cultural understandings. We heard the story while we were there. It's pretty cool. After the ceremony, I had a brief discussion with newly elected Penticton Indian Band Chief Greg Gabriel, and he is very interested in resuming efforts to strengthen our relationships between the two councils in the new year. December 7th, I think, they elect their new council. Because of the pandemic, this year's Remembrance Day service will look quite different. Much like Canada Day, we are unable to have a large gathering in Memorial Park. An invitation-only ceremony will be recorded and posted on the Summerland Legion website. And I think, yes, you're doing that. On Wednesday morning, though, please pause to remember those who died fighting for our freedoms, and remember that you are also invited to place your poppy on the cenotaph at any time on November 11th. Not sure why I put that in there. So, tonight is CAO Anthony Haddad's last regular council meeting with the district. Anthony continued to work on council priorities and worked diligently to strengthen relationships between Municipal Hall and the community that we serve. He also built mutual respect and trust amongst staff and encouraged confidence in their skills and abilities. Certainly, the pandemic added new challenges this year, but Anthony took everything in stride and stayed calm, cool, and collected, and upbeat. On a personal note, Anthony, thank you for your support and guidance, especially during these last few months. While I am sad to see you go, I understand your decision and hope we have the opportunity to collaborate on community initiatives, so Summerland and Penticton again in the near future. On behalf of council, district staff, and the community of Summerland, we will miss you, Anthony, but we do wish you all the very best in your new position as General Manager of Community Services in the City of Penticton. Broadly to Summerland. Dr. Bonnie Henry tells us we are in the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, and on top of that, we are entering our annual cold and flu season. Please continue to follow the recommendations and guidelines on the BC Centre for Disease Control website, bccdc.ca. As always, we are in this together, and together we can work on keeping our cases low here in Summerland. And that's it for tonight. CAO, your final report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, it's been a fantastic and challenging year and a bit here with the district. Massive thanks to Mayor and Council for the opportunity. And the support as well over the last year. We've been through a lot, and hopefully there's a few challenges yet to be undertaken and overcome. But I have every confidence in Mayor and Council leading the community through those challenges and through some upcoming budget sessions, and again working with the community on strengthening some of the significant priorities coming up over the next couple of years. Massive thanks to the senior leadership team. I think we've got a fantastic group of senior leaders here to keep the priorities of council and the community moving forward. So there's certainly a lot of trust that's been built in that group over the last number of years, but over the last year we've been working with them. A lot of confidence in the team that we have to lead the community and the organisation forward with council. And to the entire district of Summerland staff, very committed, very proud organisation. A lot of work ahead of them to continue with the momentum that's been built over the last few years, and really look forward to seeing that momentum under the direction of council and the city management team moving forward in a positive direction. So it's been a busy year. It's been a fantastic experience, and really appreciate the opportunity that council and the community have given me, and very much look forward to swimming pool at the district of Summerland in the next couple of years. So there's some exciting projects to come for the community, and really look forward to seeing council leading those forward in a positive direction with the community. So thank you, Mayor Boot and council, for having me for just over a year. Thank you.
No public comment, I wouldn't think, Karen. Okay. And are there any notices of motion that people would like to bring, councillors like to bring forward? All right. So no correspondence, no committee or commission. What did you guys do while I was away?
All of the work. It's all done.
It's all done, thank you. On to councillor reports. We'll start with you, Councillor Barkle.
Nothing to report, but and I hope that Anthony understands it's only because of COVID we're not having a giant going away party for you.
Thank you. Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing to report, but I do wish our CEO, Anthony, good luck in your next phase at the city of Penticton. It was a pleasure when I worked for you, and it was a pleasure that I've worked with you. So I look forward to seeing you again.
Councillor Tran?
Last week I attended 2 legislative workshops at the RDOS, and it's been really interesting. I'm really enjoying it and kind of finding my way fitting in. We have more this week as well. We've got one on Thursday and Friday, so it's a really busy month, but it's really interesting and it's been good so far. I also wanted to thank Anthony, and I will miss your accent. I will miss you reading your Australian ways. And, Bridgerton's aging a lot, so we're really missing and thank you for your leadership and, I think being so calm, you're always calm and I think we really did that here and lots of other things too, but, I really appreciate everything you've done for us, so good luck.
Councilor Holmes?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick, RDUS update following on what Councilor Trainers just said. Congratulations to Carla Kozakovich from Naramata for being re-elected as chair. Spencer Coyne, the mayor of Princeton, is taking over for me as vice chair. Judy Sentes, Councilor from Penticton, was elected chair of the regional hospital board. And Susan Kortoff, mayor of Soyuz, is the vice chair of the hospital board. So congratulations to them. We had a couple full days of workshops last week. We heard presentations from the provincial ombudsperson and the BC Information and Privacy Commissioner, which were quite informative. And also the people from the Sterile Insect Release Program talked about the proposed changes to tax proportionate method that's between all the participating regional districts, which if it goes through will affect us a little bit. And there were some interesting discussions around the table regarding budget policies and the allocation of overheads, as well as physician recruitment, whether the RDS wanted to contribute financially to the establishment of primary care units. So similar to the discussions that we might have to have ourselves here. So this Thursday, RDS continues with strategic planning. On Friday, we start the budget deliberations, which is quite a long process, but that starts on Friday. And I'd also like to thank Anthony for your service to the district, and we'll always see you.
Thank you, Councilor Holmes. Councilor Carlson?
Well, nobody's mentioned it yet, but I think we should also be thanking our neighbors to the south for voting in record numbers last week. It's really the feeling that you get when you know that things might be okay is it's a nice feeling. So I think democracy in action is really, really fun to watch. And I think people need to recognize that COVID is real and there's a lot of lies out there. And so I hope that we can continue to dissuade people from believing the wrong things. And I think even locally, it's really important. If you get confronted at the grocery store, as I was a couple weeks ago by a local man, he berated me for putting a mask on my child. It's like, whoa, this is real in our town. So yeah, COVID is real, and we should continue to be very vigilant. I hope we can continue to have these in-person meetings, but I guess we'll see what happens over the next little while. I've been going to the facilities in Summerland, the rec facilities, and some people take it very seriously and some people don't. And I just want to remind people to do it properly, staff as well as patrons using the swimming pool and the fitness room. They really need to do everything they can to stop this from shutting us all down again. So I just think that's an important reminder for people. And I will also say thank you. And maybe now that we're no longer your employer, we can play some footy or be friends on Facebook or something. So good luck. Yeah. You ever left food yet? Oh, no.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate Grandpa Patton on his new addition of his granddaughter, Chloe. Congratulations. I'd just like to emphasize or add to what Councilor Carlson, I hit the gym 3 days a week, 7 o'clock in the morning, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and there's up to 12 people allowed in the gym at any given time at that time, and I've been really quite impressed with the patrons. Everybody has a bottle of disinfectant and they wipe the machines down prior to use, they wipe the machines down after their use, and then the next person wipes it down again. And it's a sign of the times, and I'm grateful that people are taking this seriously, because I have family in Ontario, and it's not good. And there's small communities there like us in Summerland and smaller, and COVID's hitting them. So it's not like, well, it's in the Fraser Valley or it's in Vancouver. It's all around us and it can hit us hard if we're not careful, or being diligent. I too would like to thank Anthony. You've been a great influence on me. You've given me that calming, effect. Pretty close. I always appreciated members of the community that had any personal engagement with you. They always were really, your respect for the community, for the members of our community, they always raved about. And, I'm hoping that, these are big shoes to fill. I think you've done an incredible job in the very short time you've been here. And you will be missed. And just so you know, Aussie football is not real. It's not a sport. Okay? Thanks.
Okay. So I will. No, I guess we go into close now, don't we? Or do I adjourn this one first? Yes, okay, so I'll call for adjournment. Councillor Van Elfen and Councillor Holm, all in favor? And I guess we'll say goodnight to other people that are here.
This guy had a t-shirt on that said,